Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be taking a look at some great modern albums from 10 classic metal bands. When I say modern album, let's put, the cutoff here on 10 years old, so anything from 2014 on. So with that in mind, let's get started here. Coming in at number 10, I'm going to go with The Dying of Everything by Obituary. This is an intense, hard-hitting record here by the Florida death metal legends who returned to the studio and released an album that I think rivals some of their classic material. It's heavy, it's got some colossal riffs throughout, and some great vocals by John Tardy. Definitely, in my opinion, one of my favorite releases of 2023. I did my countdown of my favorite metal albums of the year. I'll leave it linked down below. Definitely one of my favorites, and when it comes to some of the best death metal releases of 2023, it definitely hangs with, some of the best, with new releases by Tomb Mold and Cannibal Corpse. It was a great year for death metal, and The Dying of Everything was right there with, some of my favorites from 2023. So with that in mind, some standout tracks here include Barely Alive, The Wrong Time, Without a Conscience, War, The Dying of Everything, Weaponize the Hate, and Be Warned. Fantastic stuff here by Obituary of Relapse Records. Really great album, in my opinion, their best in years, and absolutely a modern Obituary classic. Coming in at number 10 on the list, gotta go with The Dying of Everything. I'm gonna stay in 2023 here and go at 72 Seasons by Metallica. This is Metallica's most recent album, and in my opinion, their best record in nearly 2 decades. The riffs are fantastic, and lyrics on tracks like Inamorata, Too Far Gone, Room of Mirrors, and Crown of Barbed Wire are just so well written, and, a lot of people will write off modern-day Metallica and the new stuff they come out with nowadays, but, I really like this album because it pulls from pretty much every era of the band's career up until this point, so I'd say there's something on this record for even the harshest of the they never did anything good after Justice crowd, so for me, I think it's a great retrospective in that sense of the band's entire career up to this point. Forged by conflagration of molten metal fury and Hellion Metallion, a warrior for justice and salvation, ultimate god of firepower, Titanicus. That's so Judas Priest. Coming in at number 8 here, we have Firepower by Priest, going back now to 2018, their most recent album, which won't be for, much longer. They do have a new album coming out soon, The Invincible Shield, which I'll be reviewing right here on the channel, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that, but Firepower, very strong record here by the band. In my opinion, their best since Angel of Retribution. Long album. We got 14 tracks on here, so definitely some you could have, trimmed off this record to make it a little bit more tight. But when it comes to the material on this album, there's a lot of really strong tracks like Firepower, Lightning Strike, Evil Never Dies, Never the Heroes, Children of the Sun is great, very underrated, Rising from the Ruins, Flamethrower, Spectre is great, and then Sea of Red to close things out. So a lot of really strong tracks on here, in my opinion. Rob Halford still sounds good in the studio here. Got some great guitar work, as always, kind of part of Judas Priest's trademark. So Priest doing some great stuff in the studio here as recently as 2018 with Firepower. How about Rock Believer by the Scorpions from 2022? This is a fun, energetic album that sees the band turning back the clock, and there are a lot of tracks on here that I think wouldn't sound out of place on a lot of those classic 80s albums. So with standouts here like Gas in the Tank, Roots of My Boots, Rock Believer, Shining of Your Soul, Seventh Son, Peacemaker, Call of the Wild, and When You Know Where You Come From. This really sees the band pursuing their best studio effort in many, many years. Hands down their best album of the 21st century, and, again, very much an old school sounding Scorpions record where a lot of these songs very much could fit on those 80s albums, which I enjoyed quite a bit. And so when it comes down to it, the Scorpions do make another album to follow this up. I hope they follow a similar formula because this album was fantastic and, in my opinion, exactly what the Scorpions need to be doing at this stage in their careers. For number 6, I'm going to go with Flotsam and Jetsam and Blood in the Water. Flotsam and Jetsam are a band that have been doing some great work, pretty much under the radar. A lesser talked about thrash metal band these days, but still doing some fantastic work in the studio, including Blood in the Water from 2021. Continuing their great streak of studio albums here with a heavy, thrashy record that, again, I think this is going to be a recurring theme. A lot of the material on here could rival some of their classic stuff, and I could argue is a absolute modern-day classic with tracks like Blood in the Water, Burn the Sky, A Place to Die, The Walls, Cry for the Dead, Reaggression, and 7 Seconds Till the End of the World. Really thrashy and heavy and got some great guitar work throughout. I love this album. It's probably my favorite of theirs in many, many years. So when it comes down to it, Flotsam and Jetsam are forever underrated, but this album is one of my favorites of the past 10 years. It really shows they still have a lot left to offer. Top 5 now, I'm going to go with Titans of Creation by Testament. Going to stay thrashy here. This is, in my opinion, a top 5 Testament album for sure. This is their best album in a very long time. Probably their best album, I would say, since the Ritual, maybe even since Practice What You Preach. This is the band here, just doing some incredible work in the studio. Such a heavy, re-listenable album here from Nuclear Blast Records. Children of the Next Level is incredible. World War III, Dream Deceiver, City of Angels, False Prophet, Curse of Osiris, Catacombs. Every song in here is a banger. You know, in my opinion, this is the album that really sold me on modern-day Testament. But they've been doing some really strong work, in my opinion, since the reunion. But this album is far and away their best. So when it comes down to it here, again, a top 5, maybe even top 3 Testament album as far as I'm concerned. Chuck Billy sounds fantastic, and the guitar work is off the charts. So can't rave about this album more. Just some great stuff here by Testament, who are working on a new studio album right now. So hopefully whatever they follow this album up with is, on par, but going to be a very hard album to top. Number 4, let's go with Fear Inoculum by Tool from 2019. This is the first Tool album to be released since 2006 and the release of 10,000 Days. So quite a long time in between releases there, to say the least, but Tool are a band that it's really about quality over quantity. So even though it took them so long, they still returned here to the studio with a fantastic record, probably with a lot of great ideas stored up, and so you can definitely hear those ideas being fleshed out to their entirety on this record. Very atmospheric album by the band here, very experimental, very progressive as well. Great guitar work throughout, great drumming by Danny Carey, really interesting lyrics by Maynard James Keenan, all the tools for what makes a great Tool album on display here. So when it comes to the track listing, some of my favorite tracks include Fear Inoculum, the title track is incredible, Pneuma, Tempest, Invincible is great, and Culling Voices. This is an album that I always enjoyed, but I definitely picked up a newfound appreciation for it after seeing Tool live recently. Their set list was very heavy on Fear Inoculum material, and the stuff just comes off so great live, especially Pneuma, just incredible live song. I could definitely see that song being in the set list even after this tour is over, so very happy with this album here. Again, Tool takes them a very long time to make a new studio album. Hopefully their next album doesn't take nearly as long, but a band that, quality comes in first, and so when it comes to this album here, it's definitely an album that showcases the band's musicianship to the umpteenth level here. So great stuff, and in my opinion, one of Tool's best studio albums, although when it comes to ranking their discography, it's very difficult because they don't have many to rank. Top 3 now, let's go with Self-Titled by Helloween from 2021. The return of Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen marks the first album of the reunion era, the Pumpkins United lineup. 3 vocalists here alongside Andy Darris, so this is Helloween firing on every possible cylinder as far as I'm concerned. This is a heavy, powerful, even proggy at times record that really helped to reinforce the greatness of Helloween and just how important Kai Hansen and Michael Kiske are to the Helloween sound as far as I'm concerned. Some standout tracks here include Out for the Glory, Fear of the Fallen, Best Time, Angels. Robot King is incredible, one of my favorite Helloween tracks of the 21st century. Orbit and Skyfall to close things out. Great stuff here by Helloween. Their best album in many, many, many years, and it's so great to have Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen back with the band. Definitely a noticeable change and a massive improvement, in my opinion. The Pumpkins United lineup is incredible, and to see the band at this point, doing some of the best work of their careers, it's just great to see. Number 2, I'm going to go with Dystopia by Megadeth. Megadeth Unleashed here in 2016, which was a great year for thrash metal, but this album takes the cake in terms of the best thrash releases of 2016 as far as I'm concerned. Looking at the track listing here, The Threat is Real, Dystopia, Fatal Illusion, Death from Within, Post-American World, Poisonous Shadows, Foreign Policy is a great cover, The Emperor, Lying in State, it's all fantastic here. Very heavy stuff here by Megadeth, super thrashy. A lot of it is indicative of their early material, and so for me, I think it's their best album in quite a long time. Probably their best record since Euthanasia, and so with that in mind here, it comes in pretty high on my list. For 2016, the best thrash metal release of the year, which was, like I said, very stacked year for thrash. Gotta go with Dystopia by Megadeth. And finally, coming in at number 1, I'm gonna go with The Book of Souls by Iron Maiden from 2015. One of the first albums that I ever owned back in 2015 when I was first starting to collect CDs. The Book of Souls sees Iron Maiden moving in a more progressive direction, pursuing that sound that they had been moving towards throughout the 2000s, but it's a great blend of melodic prog that we would see on Senjutsu, and still that heavy Iron Maiden sound with the gallop and all that good stuff that really helped to define Iron Maiden, that crunch as well that was still there. And so this album makes for an incredible listen and a great bridge, I think, from Final Frontier to Senjutsu. Great double album with standout tracks on here that include If Eternity Should Fail, Speed of Light, The Great Unknown, The Red and the Black, The Book of Souls, Death or Glory, Tears of a Clown, and Empire of the Clouds, the 18-minute epic to close things out, which is probably the most Bruce Dickinson song Bruce Dickinson could ever write, unless, of course, he was recording it while also flying a plane and fencing at the same time. But what's a shame to me is that this album seems to be pretty much forgotten in the Iron Maiden catalog already. We're two tours later, and nothing has been performed live from this album since the end of the Book of Souls tour, and what I'm afraid is that it's going to, follow in the footsteps of the Final Frontier album, and to a lesser extent, the Dance of Death album, wherein a lot of the material is very seldom played live or included in their set lists, and seemingly gets forgotten by the band, which it definitely shouldn't. There's a lot of fantastic stuff on here. I saw the band live on this tour, and a lot of the stuff came off very well live. It really helped to solidify my Iron Maiden fandom and what made them my favorite band. So there's definitely a bit of sentimental bias towards this album here, but I wish the band would pay more attention to it and maybe do some stuff from this album live on whatever tour they do next after the conclusion of the Future Past tour, but that's not going to be for a while, and so I would highly doubt that we're ever going to hear any live stuff from the Book of Souls again, which is an absolute crime, but it's a great album, very underrated, I think, and when it comes to some of the best Maiden releases of the 21st century, this has to be right up there, neck and neck with Brave New World. So that wraps up this video here, counting down 10 great modern albums from classic metal bands, which should be visible right over here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below. Also, be sure to turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload. And let me know down in the comment section below what are some other great modern albums from classic metal bands that you enjoy. I want to hear from you. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.